present arms.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Left, face. Right shoulder, arms. Forward, march.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Long. I'm the Director of Education here at the National D-Day Memorial. And let's start by thanking the cadets of the Bedford JROTC program for their participation as color guards and laying the wreath in a little while. Since 1990, the third Friday in September has been recognized in the United States as National POW MIA Recognition Day, a day set aside to honor those who were prisoners of war, POWs, or who are still missing in action, MIAs. If you think about it, these are two distinct but necessarily overlapping groups. Those who endured a prisoner of war experience were likely classified at some point as missing in action, and those who are missing in action may or may not have been POWs. But whichever category a man or a woman fell into, we honor them today because they deserve our gratitude and our respect. I'd like to honor all of them by highlighting one in particular, a man I was privileged to meet years ago. His name was Thomas Gagné. He was a resident of Roanoke in his last years, and he was a prisoner of war held by the Japanese during the Second World War. His experiences, of course, were unique to himself, but they speak to the example of so many others. So hear the story of Tom Gagné. Tom was born in 1919 in Fort Worth, Texas, and was drafted into the U.S. Army in May of 1941. He found himself posted in the Philippines as part of the 803rd Engineer Aviation Battalion at Clark Field. At that time, a posting in the Philippines was considered nearly ideal surface in peacetime in a tropical paradise. Neither Tom nor any of his fellow soldiers could imagine what was to come. By the end of the year, they will be at war and fighting for their lives. The Japanese attacked American territory on the Philippines soon after beginning the war with the attack at Pearl Harbor, December of 1941. American forces in the Philippines were determined to make a stand and oppose the enemy as their duty required and as best they were able, but they did so with little hope of evacuation and little hope of relief. Tom Gagné, for his part, was wounded in late January and evacuated to recover to the island fortress of Corregidor. The American forces on the Bataan Peninsula were forced to surrender in April of 1942. Corregidor held out for another 27 days before the beleaguered forces there had to surrender as well. And with that, Corporal Tom Gagné entered the unimaginable hell that was the Japanese POW camps. His first camp was the notorious Cabanatuan, but by October of 1942, Tom was shipped to another labor camp near Mukden, Manchuria. As Tom would later tell the story, in transit to that camp aboard a ship, he woke up below decks in pitch blackness and in stifling heat. So he very carefully felt his way to the deck, hoping for some fresh air. On the deck, he heard the voice of one of his buddies nearby, and he asked him, "Have you ever seen such a black night?" His buddy replied, "What are you talking about, Tom? It's broad daylight." And with that, Tom realized that likely due to months of malnutrition, he had gone blind. He recovered some of his sight over time, but his vision never fully returned. At the camp at Mukden, Tom was forced to operate complex machinery despite his diminished eyesight. At first, he received some medical care, but as the war went on, that began to stop, especially when a new medical officer by the name of Kuwashima took over the camp hospital. And Kuwashima, for whatever reason, zeroed in on Tom mercilessly. In October of 1944, for instance, he accused Tom of stealing some alcohol and beat him severely, inflicted the water torture upon him, and locked him in an unheated cell without food or water for days. At the end of the war, of course, the prisoners of war of the Japanese were liberated, and the full enormity of the POW system was exposed. There was no question that individual soldiers would be held accountable for their treatment of POWs. And in 1946, Captain Kuwashima and his commander, a colonel by the name of Matsuda, were brought before an international court for trial, and Thomas Gagnier, still considered legally blind by the Army, agreed to testify at the war crimes trial. I am not going because I want revenge, Tom told a newspaper, but because I believe just punishment of war criminals might help prevent another war. And so, largely due to Tom Gagnier's testimony, Kuwashima was found guilty. Tom Gagnier deserves our respect not only for what he endured as a POW, but also for how he picked up the pieces of his life and achieved amazing things after the war. Although his eyesight never recovered and he was considered legally blind, he went to college, became a teacher, and later a school principal here in Virginia. He married, he raised 2 children, and he became a leader in many post-war veterans organizations, including the Disabled American Veterans, American Ex-Prisoners of War, the American Legion, the VFW, American Defenders of Baton, and the Blinded Veterans Association. I had the privilege of meeting Tom Gagnier shortly before his death in September of 2000 and hearing him speak about his experiences, and I will always remember the quiet grace and dignity of this man who had suffered so much, but who bravely made a stand for post-war justice and then worked hard to make the world a better place. Tom Gagnier was one of only many, each with his own story to tell, but with his example in mind, we take the opportunity of this annual commemoration to renew our commitment to remembering that no veteran will be forgotten or underappreciated, and that no American still missing in action will ever be forgotten. Thank you, and we'll now lay a wreath in memory of those who are still missing in action. Now let's have a moment of silence for the MIAs and POWs. Thank you. And this concludes our ceremony today. Thank you.